Hi guys.
Are you here?
Hello.
Hello, join us.
Welcome to the gathering room.
It's Sunday, it's the gathering room. That much is still the same.
Yes, it's the same. The same as it always has been for time
Yes.
immemorial.
So,
Yeah.
even if it's the only thing that's the same, here we are. We're getting a lag on it saying no one's here, and we're going,
Yeah, we're like, there are literals, there is no one here.
I think there is. I bet there is. There usually is.
There usually are by this point, and then I wonder if the interwebs.
Maybe it's because we didn't talk about our hair like we usually do.
I
Maybe everyone was like, I don't care
we
about
didn't
this.
use the
crap.
computer as a makeup mirror.
I'm seeing people's. Hi, people's.
I
How
don't
you
see
going?
any people.
Yeah, there's 25.
Oh, 25 people.
Hi, Cindy. Thank you. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, there are 3 of us in the gathering room. Oh, love to you so much. And
Hi, Flo. Lovely to see you,
Oh my
darling.
God, it's
Hi, Laurie.
Laurie and Elizabeth. It's incredible.
Melanie
How much
Phoenix.
joy.
Hi, Buddha Boo.
And Ashburn and Carl and Carrie, sorry. Joan, this is why the Badger does the reading. Oh, babies.
Hi, it's great to see you guys. Hi, Cleo in Portugal.
It's amazing how, like, when the first names started showing up, I thought it was pretty much under control.
Yeah.
But my heart just about exploded with gratitude that you're here. We're
still here.
We're still here. We're all still here. Each of us like locked in our houses or our apartments and watching some pretty scary headlines.
Yeah.
Which brings us to our topic du jour. Which is safe haven in the storm. Because this is we've talked about storms before. Well, buckle up, mariners, because storms is here.
They sure are. I'm going to fix this.
Thanks for being here. Yeah, give me some.
I'll give
get
you
the
some.
headroom right, and then let's talk. Let's just talk about this, okay?
Sorry, everyone. Okay,
there we go. So if my eyes look red and I keep dabbing at them, that is not anything to worry about. It's allergies, because we opened all the windows today. Because why the heck not get allergies? Because allergies are so ridiculously trivial compared to everything else. So, and I've had a visit from insomnia. My old nemesis, insomnia, has been paying me visits in the night. And that, by this, I know that I am highly worried. Sorry to be laughing. There's a point where if you don't laugh, what are you going to do, right? So yeah, this is March 29th, 2020. A day we'll look back on the way my father's generation looked back on the Spanish flu epidemic of 1918. Did I mention this last week? He would talk about looking out at the street in the morning to see which houses had coffins going to them. Just to cheer you up, I thought I'd add that detail. But yeah, we actually have the ability to gather here, and it's the thing that is keeping me from actually freaking out. That's not true. I freak out about 5 times a day. But see, it's okay, because when the storm gets going and I see another chilling headline or something even worse happens, I have a place to go. Even when I can't sleep, I have a place to go. Pascal said all of humanity's miseries come from the fact that we are unable to sit quietly alone in a room. And this situation, the pandemic of 2020, is forcing us all to do something I call working in. Like Adam, my son, can't go to the gym anymore. We're going to do Skype sessions with his trainer. Thank God for the internet. But we can't go to work out at the gym. We can't actually go out anywhere except for vital emergencies at this point. And what that means is it's time to work in. When I was very sick and in a lot of pain for about 12 years at one point, this is where I learned to go for sanctuary. And I did not want to learn it. And by the way, meditation and contemplation and mindfulness and all that stuff were weird in America back then. I only did it because I was an Asian studies major. East Asian languages and civilizations. I thought I might as well know what all the shouting's about, so I'm going to try this meditation thing. I'm going to try mindfulness. I'm going to be Zen, when nobody even knew the word Zen. But I was really, really sick, and I didn't, nobody knew why. And we still don't know why. They think it was a bunch of autoimmune diseases related to insomnia, by the way, so stay posted. But I started reading mostly Asian directions about how to find sanctuary in difficult times. I love the Tibetan proverb that says, since death is certain and the hour of death is uncertain, what is the most important thing? And, you know, for people who were in the Middle Ages in the Himalayas facing, you know, no modern medicine, incredibly bad weather conditions and so on, death probably loomed really large. You know, a lot of women didn't make it through childbirth. Those that did often lost their children in the first couple of years. I mean, often, like death was a frequent visitor in every house. So they made this a practice not to turn away from what was happening, but to turn and go directly into it. So this is the weird thing I'm about to tell you. Last night when I couldn't sleep, I thought, I don't know what's happening. I keep my mind quite steady and peaceful, but I wasn't sleeping. And that meant that at some level it was getting to me. So I sat up in bed and I thought, if I have to meditate through another night, which I probably will have to, it's going to be very disturbing to me. But what I did was, instead of trying to calm myself by saying, it's okay, it's not that bad, it may be or it may not be that bad. What I did was I turned directly into my fears, and I decided, and I took them head on. I may have mentioned to you guys that there was this huge volcanic explosion sometime in the 19th century. And it was in Krakatoa, which is in Indonesia, and it literally blew an island off the face of the earth. It just kapow. I know I've said this to you because I remember mentioning the sound was heard 700 miles away, and the only sailor whose ship actually made it through that storm, it wasn't a storm, it was a tidal wave that followed the volcanic eruption. He heard the sound and he turned his ship directly into the wave that he knew would come soon. And he had everybody go below and tie themselves to the walls of the ship, and he tied himself to the wheel. And then when the wave came, he pointed the ship directly into it, and it went up, going almost vertical. The only people hurt were those who weren't tied down the way he said that they should be. And that ship rode out that incredible, devastating wave. So a lot of meditation is about going directly into whatever devastating wave you're facing. And I just want to say right now that I am holding so many people in my heart and in my consciousness with love and with so much gratitude and prayer for whatever that's worth. Anybody out there who's sick right now, anyone whose loved ones are ill, anyone whose loved ones have maybe already gone, maybe they've died from this thing, anybody who's on the front lines, and that's doctors and nurses, but it's also grocery store workers and mail carriers and people who are like keeping the water and the electricity running. You're like, the heroism of the common people has never been so evident, and it's never been so global. Like, this is a thing we've never faced before in a time of such vivid and immediate communication. So the horror is greater, but so is the heroism. So is the compassion. So is all the goodness of the human spirit. So I want to shout out to everybody. And then also to everybody who's afraid. Oh, that would be all of us. So we're facing different levels of fear, sorrow. Last week I talked about grief, because we've all lost so much already, and we all have something called, I read in an article this week, anticipatory grief. We're actually grieving things that we will lose, that we haven't lost yet, but because we can think ahead. I talked about this 2 weeks ago, staying in the present and not future tripping, but we can't. Like, we're thinking creatures, we project into the future, and that's when we freak out. So whether it's something you've already lost, something you're in the process of losing now, or something that you fear losing in the future, there's a big wave coming, at least in our best educated guesses, right? So what we want to do is find a way to drop anchor, face into the change, and basically tie ourselves to the wheel. This is what I did all night, and it worked really well. And I didn't know if I would do it with you guys because it's quite an advanced meditation technique. But actually, I think this might be the right moment for it. It's a meditation that was designed specifically for times when we have extreme unpleasant emotion, fear, anger, sadness, grief. Like, I think I said sadness twice. Insomnia, fear, anger, sadness. Those are the three categories. So whatever you're facing in that direction, what I want you to do is first sit comfortably and see if you can find the size of the emotion. Like, where is it in your body? Is it like mine, like hangs onto my shoulders like a massive vampire bat? The fear does. The grief floods my chest and then up into my head, and I have this sort of leaden sensation. This has the sadness. I don't have a ton of anger, but when it comes like a fist in my solar plexus. Not very often. I'm doing what I'm asking you guys to do right now. Find the thing in your body. Now, last night, my anxiety was much bigger than my body. So it was an emanating field all around me. And it was big. It was a lot bigger than I was. Now, what you want to do, and this is where you tie yourself to the mast, instead of trying to push away that emotion, you're going to get curious about it. You're going to explore it. I started doing this when I was 14. I would have become an agoraphobe, locked in my room a long time ago because I was afraid of everything. And the more I pulled back from the world, the more I was afraid of the things that I still interacted with during the day. I was classic. I was on course for being a classic, shut in, afraid of everything. And I realized when I was 14 that I was either going to end up that way or I was going to do things that scared me every single day. So I started making myself do something that scared me every day, and I still do. And that basically led me to almost everything that has ever happened in my life that is good since then. So what did I do? Did I get rid of my intense fears and anxieties? No. I learned to have them and not freak out. I learned to explore them and befriend them, and to notice their characteristics. So what I want you to do now is you've got the negative emotion, you've located sort of the size, see the color of it, the temperature, the texture, whatever it is that characterizes this for you. And if it's in a specific place, you can actually think the word local. This is local, like the tension in my shoulders is very localized. But my anxiety is global. So you say the word global. It's your whole body, it's everything. And when I was saying this last night, I could feel the whole world. It was literally global. Or so I imagined. And then once you've understood sort of the bigness of it, imagine that your attention, not peace of mind, not jolly, feel good, but just attention itself, is a liquid, very clear liquid that lights everywhere it goes. And it's the texture of thin honey or thick oil. So you're going to find the dark or bad or frightening emotion, and you're going to picture how big it is, and then you're going to picture like a huge water pitcher or glass like this. With your attention, you're going to pour your attention into the negative feeling. Now, if it's 50 feet above your head, fine. You've got enough attention to fill the Eiffel Tower, the Empire State Building. So I want you to picture your attention coming as a bright stream of liquid light that comes down, and it might strike your head and it goes inside you and it comes into your core, and then it starts to fill the feeling. Look really closely at this feeling. Look at your fear. Just examine it the way you might examine a jewel that you found in the dust. Pick it up, brush it off, look at its facets, look at the way it can shine in the light, look at what's within it, see if you can see your reflection in it, and the whole time your attention is filling the sensation. And it's just attention. You don't need hardiness. You don't need to be free from pain. I used to, if you're in physical pain, find the pain and pour attention into it. This is how I dealt with 12 years of chronic pain, just pouring attention into it. I pushed away from it for about 7 years. And then I learned to do this kind of stuff where I was lovingly attentive to the very particular sensations of my own pain. And I didn't use any cheer me up mantras or anything, just attention, attention, attention. And as we watch our pain with curiosity, as if it's a jewel we found in the dust, attention begins to become us. The eyes that are looking out to see the world become who we are. And attention itself is the divine power within us. It's curious. It's having an incredible, amazing time in this very human body that is you or me, in the very suffering that we feel. So as your attention fills it, now what I want you to do is you picture the sensation gently pulsing inward, outward, inward, outward. And you just see that light that's filling it, that's your attention, and it starts to beat like a heart. And everything in the universe ebbs and flows, pulses in and out. And as you watch your own divine attention beginning to push into something and then back out from it, there's something about that action that is like rocking a baby. There's a reason babies love to be rocked, yeah? And it can fill the whole body. So if you just bring that light through the whole body and emanating out from the body, and every time you start to slip, say, oh, I slipped. Let me pay attention to the slip. Let me pay attention to why I slipped. You go in, you find the fear or the distraction, and you pour your attention into it. This is so, the reason I used it all last night was in times like these, positive aphorisms don't help me much. I had to go for the really pure stuff. And pure divine energy doesn't pity us. It doesn't rush to rescue us from the circumstances that we think are dangerous. It wants to rescue us from the real danger, which is that we will forget what we are, that we will be unable to sit quietly alone in a room, that we will not know how to be without doing. When we learn to be without doing, everywhere we are is safe haven in the storm. The capacity to pay attention is safe haven in the storm. And by doing this is the premise of this meditation technique, is that the negative emotions themselves blast off huge chunks of ego and fear and sadness and connect us directly to our source. And actually, if they aren't scared enough or in enough pain or cold enough to really get themselves going, the people who created that phrase, since death is certain and the hour of death is uncertain, what is important, they do something called adding wood to the fire. They'll go into a circumstance, like a really scary roller coaster ride, that will cause them to lose their grounding. And then it might take them a long time, minutes, hours, but they finally get back to the attention that pours in, even if they're in chaos, even if they're on a roller coaster. And it starts to connect them beyond the fear, beyond the grief, beyond the anger, beyond the insomnia. It connects us to what we essentially are, which can never, ever be harmed. It is always wrapping itself around us and telling us we're safe. I just want to finish before that. I asked the gracious badger to come back and read your questions by repeating something my son told me a long time ago. I think I've mentioned this. It was such a weird thing. We were listening to the sounds the planet makes as the spacecraft Voyager goes by them, and it picks up radio waves that it translates into sounds. And different planetary bodies or asteroids or whatever, they all make different sounds. So all the planets make different sounds. If you Google them, you can hear them. and they're all different from each other. So Earth is like, but Saturn, I think, is more like, it's like very weird and extraterrestrial. So we were listening to these, a bunch of us in my house, and Adam, my son, walked by. My son with Down syndrome walked by and then did a double take, and he came in and he said, "What are those sounds? I have those sounds in my body." And I was like, "Really? That's weird, because that's the sound that the planets make." And Adam said, "Oh, yeah, that's a message." I said, "What?" Because he's hard to understand. He said, "A call. It's a message. They're calling. Like, get with the program, Mom." So I was like, "A message from the planets? What is it?" And Adam just said that we're safe. And then he just walked away. And this is the kid that I thought would end my happiness forever, and in whose life I could see no benefit. Wow, was I wrong. And wow, are some of us wrong right now, as we think that there is no good to be found in this situation. There is good to be found in this situation, my dears. There is much good. We just have to wait out the storm and stay like tied to the wheel in it. So here is the gracious badger, here to read.
Here I am. It's been lovely reading your comments, everyone, through this. You people in it. Katie Barron was asking, how do you deal with resistance with that exercise? She says, I could do it with the sadness and anger, but not with the fear.
Oh, you just allow the fear to be as big as it is. You go into it instead of out, and that is so, fear makes us want to run away. That's the first thing we do. And we are more afraid of the feeling of fear than almost anything else. So to go into it and start to explore it. Okay, so you actually, you notice what it physically does. Okay, heart rate excelling. Oh, muscles clamped here. All right, thoughts racing. Okay, and you start to describe the components of the fear, and it re-anchors you away from absolute panic and into that attention mode, which flips the switch out of fight or flight and puts you in a state of calm. And it's so weird that you can get there through the fear. And that's why this is a very advanced technique, but I feel like we're in very advanced circumstances. So I hope that helps. It helped me last night. And if you stay with it, it will help. I can tell you that. If you stay with it, it will help. And we don't have a lot of choices about what we stay with and what we don't these days.
That is true. Judith asks, how to shift between the divine and daily life and worries and work.
The beauty, if there is any to be found in this situation, is that, we could say, okay, I'm going to go about my daily life and not think about the pandemic. Good luck. It puts itself into your attention field. And what that means is that there is always something that's frightening, or there's always a pathway to source, because the negative feeling is the pathway to source. You would forget in the course of daily life to recenter yourself and find your connection spiritually. That's just something we do after hours in our culture, right? It's not something we put at the front. But now the fear is so overwhelming, and the sorrow and everything that we've got going on is so overwhelming that as you go about your daily life, you'll be hit in the head by the fear 1,000 times a day. Every single time it happens, it's a pathway back to your divine self. It's a pathway to source. Just keep at it, you guys. Keep at it. We're going to do this together. We're going to work in until we'll all be like super enlightened and sleeping through the night.
Actually, this is a great segue. Jane Taylor asks a question that's very close to our hearts. My fear is that things will go back to normal. We need massive change. Will things change?
You guys, all right, time to go the full woo. I wrote a book called Diana Herself about the reawakening of the divine feminine. And it's part of a trilogy. And not to give away the second book, but the second book, which I had already outlined, I think I've mentioned this, is about a plague. Because the heroine of my first book is the goddess Diana, fiction. And Diana had a twin brother, Apollo. And Apollo is the god of music and also the god of two seemingly contradictory things, plague and healing. So the second book that I had already started writing was about a plague and it's focused in New York City. And I put in all sorts of strange things. For example, the main carriers were very young children and babies, but they didn't have symptoms. Like, we've never had a plague that had that characteristic before. They've always, children die more than adults in a lot of plagues. So, what I thought as I was writing this book was that the third book has to be about how we save the world, little thing like that. But I thought, okay, we are going so close to the brink of destruction. We can't just slow down things like carbon emissions. We have to U-turn and go the other way. And imagine you're driving a huge, heavy truck at a very high speed, and you have to turn it 180 degrees and go back the other way. Only the mass of this thing is 9 billion humans. People change because their minds change. And the only way you're going to change people's minds is with something that impacts us all in a very attention-getting way. Something that you can feel how much we all hate giving up our normal lives. And yet we have to if we're going to save the world. So what could possibly do that? I thought to myself as I planned these books. And the only thing I could think of was something awful, an illness going out that would turn everyone's attention to something very different, turn our attention to things like this gathering room. And I mean, that's why we've been doing this. We've been doing it because we believe in the transformation of consciousness. We believe that the time is now. We believe that the ultimate effect is to preserve the existence of humans on the earth and of animals and trees and all the things that keep us alive. That to do that, we have to transform. I said it last week, I'll say it again. Don't say destruction, say transformation. And even as awful as it is awful. I am not minimizing it. Even if we should get sick and die, it would be transformation. It's my whole life I've been waiting for this event. And I'd actually written it down, an eerily accurate version of it already, to the point where last night when I couldn't sleep, I literally got into this fever dream where I thought, I think I made this happen. Maybe. I hope not. I hope not. But yeah, I'm not sure how it's going to change us, but the fact is that it has to go on and on. When Adam was diagnosed before he was born, I used to think, why did I have, because I didn't sleep for 4 months. I thought, why couldn't I just be happy during my pregnancy? And the reason was, for me now, the meaning I make of it, is that I had to go through an extended period of terrible fear where the worst outcomes were horrifying and the best outcomes were still horrifying to me at that point. So I had to be broken, like ground to powder almost, for my ego to let go, because I have such a strong, gnarly ego. And it had to be like smashed out of me. And it had to go on and on and on and on. That's why I do what I do. That's why we're here together. I'm afraid we'll kind of be in it right now for a while, going on and on with uncertainty, you guys, not with a disaster. What I thought was disaster was the greatest blessing. I can't even describe it. But yeah, it's going to go on a while and change us in ways that will help us save the planet.
Well, that's amazing. Can I bring it down just before we go to a question that a lot of people have asked in different forms that I'd love you to just touch on before we go. Yeah. So I think, so many of us are getting so much from being here in the gathering room, but we also have people around us who aren't necessarily able to tune into this kind of comfort, this safe haven. And so whether it's people being depressed, people who are not taking it seriously enough, people who are, away and anxious, or whatever it is, but like people, a lot of our friends here are asking, how can I best serve others?
It's so beautiful. You guys are so awesome. I love you so much. Yeah. And this is what I would say. We are, when I was writing nonfiction, before I started writing fiction about how we save the world, I was studying and research is exploding in this area. The fact that we are wireless communication technologies, our bodies are. We feel each other. We are energetic waves that connect with each other. And when people are put in a room together, if they just sit quietly, they don't know each other for 20 minutes or so, the heart rhythm and the brain waves of all three people will come to match the calmest person in the room. And it's called entrainment, and it's a property of physics. Anything that has an in and an out, a push and a pull, will entrain with what is most harmonious, gentlest, most soothing rhythm. This is why we rock babies, you know? So what you do is you make this your practice. I've asked you to do something today that is really self-sacrificing. In a way, it's to save your happiness, but to steer straight into your fear and pour your attention into it is an act of unbelievable courage. And if you do it to the point where you go, all right, because I know I had to get up after a sleepless night and look you guys in the eye and say, it is going to be okay. And to do that, I had to know that. And to know that, I had to go straight into my own fear. I hope you can feel that I am strong in this. I'm like settled in it. I'm calm in it. Even though around the fringes, my emotions are not, at the center where I'm connected to my source, I am solid right now. And I'm trying to make sure that everyone connected with this broadcast gets to entrain on that. And then as you do that, it's what I said before. Maybe I should say this every gathering room. Going viral is a real thing for viruses, but it's also a real thing for love, for compassion, for courage, for healing, for joy. All these things go viral if we can find them. Oh, I want to do one more thing before we go. Sorry. I mentioned this a long time ago after I'd met Anita Morjani, a woman who was terrified of cancer, then almost died of cancer, then came back after a near-death experience and cured her horrible, total terminal cancer was gone within 9 days. And she said, here's how you go into safe haven. From wherever you are, you get to acceptance. That's what the attention pouring exercise does. It gets you to acceptance. When you reach acceptance, you can take a quick step to peace, because in this moment, acceptance is enough to give you peace. Okay. From peace, you can find gratitude for something. Okay. I am so grateful for you people out there. I am so grateful that I can have books from 2,000 years worth of meditative masters who can teach us how to cope with this. I'm grateful for so many things. Gratitude is the primary emotion that I feel these days. We talk about this all the time, these huge waves of gratitude that come along. And then from gratitude, you can get to joy. And it's not an act of betrayal in a time of grief, fear, and anger to find your own joy. It's the best way to give to others. And it can go viral without taking any more energy than clicking your mouse on your computer. You guys, thanks for sticking with me today. I hope by next week I will have meditated so much that I'll be super skippy.
You've been perfect. This is just what I needed. I'm sure that you guys would agree with me.
It's a very strange exercise, but I promise you, if you stick with this thing, we are going to ride out this storm. We're going to ride it out. It is not destruction. It is transformation. And it is love in disguise. You are love not in disguise. You're my favorites.
Take care, everyone.
See you
Take good
soon.
care. We'll see you soon.